About steps 4 and 5, which means you've completed step 1, 2, and 3 for the how high is it activity. So now, let's talk about step 4. Now step 4 says to label the density and pressure in each layer. And is there more or is there less? So for this, we've got to kind of figure out, well, how do we measure density and what on earth is density? Well, density is all the matter crammed into one spot. For example, if I have a little box, now that box has so much space. I can make that box more or less dense by how much matter I cram in there. I can cram just maybe a couple of books in that box, and that box doesn't have a lot of density. But if I cram 40 books into a tiny box, that box is going to have a ton of mass and it's going to have a lot of density because it's a small space. So in the atmosphere, this works the same way. If I am looking at the troposphere is the most dense. Why? Because based off our notes, it has 74% or 75% of the air that we breathe. That means 75% of all the air in all of Earth's atmosphere is crammed in to the troposphere, and that's the smallest layer in our atmosphere, which makes it incredibly dense. The pressure's higher, there's a lot more air molecules here, and that is what we have to illustrate. So let's talk about how we're going to do that. So let's go down to the troposphere. So I'm going to scroll down to it, and here's my troposphere. Now I want to label my troposphere to show that it's dense, so I'm going to draw a circle on here. I don't want to make the circle too big, but I want it to be so that it shows up. Then my next step is to think, how can I show density? How can I show a lot of air packed into a tiny space like the troposphere? Well, I can do that by using a color. And I think if I wanted to show more density, I might show a darker color, not a lighter color. And so I'm going to go to the paint bucket, and instead of doing solid colors, I'm going to do a gradient color. Now with the gradient color, I can get lots of different darker colors. And you can really kind of play with this. For me, I'm going to really kind of use these and say, all right, I'm going to pick a color and stick with it. Some of you may choose black to show the most dense. Me, I'm going to choose a dark orange where most of the bubble is filled in. And I'm going to click inside of there and type most dense. Then I'm ready to do the stratosphere. Now the stratosphere is the second most dense. There's 24% of our air there. And so we are going to show that by simply clicking on the same circle. And I'm going to press Control C and then Control V. And that copies and pastes it for me. I'm going to put that circle up here. Instead of saying most dense, I'm going to say second dense. And I'm going to change the color because I want to show a little bit less density. So I go back to those gradient colors, and instead of choosing the very bottom one, I'm going to choose the next one up. And so this shows a little bit lighter of a color on the outside there, kind of showing a difference in the density. I'm going to do the same for the mesosphere, same for the thermosphere, same for the exosphere. When I reach the exosphere, I'm probably going to run out of these. And so I'm going to say to myself, which one of these would actually represent the lightest, or not the lightest, but the least dense layer? So I might end up choosing a white radial gradient, and that might help me understand, or might help me illustrate the density in each layer. So that's how you do density. But the question is, how do we do pressure? Well, for pressure, we're going to have a little bit of fun. We're going to use pictures to represent pressure. So density and pressure, they work the same way. The more dense you are, the more pressure there is, which makes sense because if I shove a bunch of books in a tiny box, that box might explode. And pressure will make you explode if there's enough of it. And so we're going to represent pressure by showing a different picture. And for me, I'm going to choose faces. I think of pressure in faces, and if I really wanted to show a lot of pressure, I might show an angry face because that angry face is about to explode. And I know the troposphere has the most density, Therefore, it has the most pressure because there's more air here packed into a tiny space. So I'm going to go ahead and search for an image, and I'm just going to type in angry red face. And I get all these. And for me, I'm going to choose the one I think might choose the reddest. Now, I'm not going to choose something ridiculous like this clown face because that's probably just not appropriate. I really want to show something that represents a lot of pressure. And for me, I think it's this one. I mean, this guy has a face that looks like it's under a ton of pressure. And now it's way too big, so I better shrink it down to make it fit inside of my troposphere. And now what I want to do is the face that would show the next least amount of pressure for the stratosphere. And I'm going to go back to that red face. And for me, I think it's not a matter of, oops, accidentally clicked out of that. For me, it's not a matter of the angry red face. I think for me, it's going to be this one. This one's like the next step down because I know the stratosphere has less pressure than the troposphere. And so I'm going to put it right there, and you can see like the kind of progression that I'm looking for when it comes to pressure. I'm going to do the same for mesosphere, thermosphere, and exosphere. Now you don't have to use red angry faces. You can get very creative, and if you could think of another way to show pressure and how it changes using illustrations, then by all means go for it. But this is step 4. Let's talk about step 5. Now, step 5 asks that you put 2, using a textbook or other resources, give 2 facts for each layer and place them in the appropriate slide. Well, I told you earlier that your slides that hopefully you copied down would have a lot of information that you can use later. You see, each layer needs 2 facts. And for each layer in our notes, I gave you at least 2 facts. And some, I gave you 3 facts. And some, I may have even given you 4 facts. And so you have to understand that you already have the resources that you need to do step 5, which is give 2 facts about each layer, and you could draw a box to simply insert those facts in for each layer and type them in. So these are steps 4 and step 5. Hopefully you did your notes, so that way you can make your How High Is It model complete. If you complete the How High Is It model, please let the sub know, and she will give you further instructions. Good luck!